The Warriors team is in limbo right now, and the starting big three that we all know and love is witnessing what we call the downfall of a dynasty. And in a downfall of a dynasty, things are never, ever pretty to look at. Everything looks a little bit ugly, things are a little bit out of whack, and it really starts with the names that we've always kind of known: Draymond, Steph, and Clay. And then also, we can never forget mastermind of it all, Steve Kerr, the person who has gotten probably one of the most ridicule of the recent years for the Golden State Warriors' success and for their failures, but more so for their failures. And right now, he is back in the news because the rookies, the future that was supposed to be for the Golden State Warriors, and when they drafted Jonathan Kuminga, when they drafted Moses Moody, and then when they also had the James Wiseman draft pick, their future is really in question right now, with James Wiseman being on the Pistons and Jonathan Kuminga coming out and saying that he has lost all faith to Steve Kerr, which is also correlating to Moses Moody being upset at his minutes. This is all putting the team in a very, very tough spot, because we have to look at this team in its totality and not just the sum of its parts. Right now, when we look at how the team is performing in the league and how they are barely making the play-in game, right behind the Lakers and teetering back and forth from making it and not making it in the 10th and 11th spot, and then also having issues of players being injured and also Draymond Green not being in the lineup, you're going to have a recipe for disaster. The dynasty downfall has been happening ever since Kevin Durant left, and they somehow managed and scrounged up a championship throughout all the ruckus and made one of the most impressive runs in NBA history with the original trio that they once became very popular for in Draymond, Clay, and Steph. But this year's a little bit different. And this year's a little bit different for multiple reasons. Klay Thompson is coming back from an injury and sidelining him from being one of the best players on that team for a very long time, and now he's trying to find his foothold in the team. However, there are many things and many obstacles that's stopping him, and most of that becomes from his mental side. And mentally, how does he even prepare for the game when he has to see that he is just simply not the player that he once was? He was known for his defensive prowess, but now he's a little bit of a liability. He's not as good as a defender as he once was. His shooting is now streaky, and it always really has been streaky for the most part, but at least he can consistently put up maybe 15 to 18 points a night with Stephen Curry leading the way. But now everything is put in question, because when you're struggling and you're losing at the same time, everything is compounded onto each other. And now you become, in your mind, the reason why you're losing. And then he came out with this press conference that pretty much confirmed everything that we have been thinking about Klay Thompson, at least for myself, and how he's been struggling mentally.
Well, Steve and I had actually a great conversation yesterday, and that helped me relax a lot. Sometimes I forget just how successful and how lucky I've been to be a part of championship teams and all-star games and gold medals. And when you want to get back to that level so badly, you can kind of get in your own way. And rather than forcing it, we had a conversation about just enjoying this last chapter of my career and how lucky I truly am to still be playing this game.
And so hearing this is not a good sign. It is not a good sign, especially if you are a Golden State Warriors fan, the very few of you guys left. And especially if you're just a lover of basketball. Me, I love seeing dynasties. I like seeing a team dominate a certain period. It kind of hallmarks a certain period of my life, and it's always enjoyable to see. Even though I really did not like the KD version of the Warriors, but I do like the Warriors when they were going against Cleveland every year before KD, and then now when they won. But this is the time where, like I said before, it is on the downturn. It is on the heel end of the dynasty that they once had. And then we have to go start with Draymond Green, which is, where do we even start? Draymond Green is the pivotal piece of the Golden State Warriors. And I know that sounds crazy because everybody looks at him and says, hey, what does he do on the court? And you have Stephen Curry dropping 10 threes a game, and you're looking at Stephen Curry, maybe even looking at Klay Thompson, and you're saying, well, what does this triple single guy got to offer? But this guy is the only reason why this team really works. If you watch basketball, if you see how the defense is played, if you see how offense is kind of orchestrated, he is the sole centerpiece of that offense. And it doesn't mean that he's going to score a lot, but in order for the offense to run, especially with the space that he garners on the three-point line, interesting with the fact that now this year he's shooting the best he's ever shot in his whole career. But even then, he still is a person that heads the offense, that makes sure everything's going all right. Literally the point guard. He has been in and out of the lineup for reasons that are completely avoidable. Being out because you put Rudy Gobert, of all people, in a headlock is avoidable. Being out for multiple games because then as soon as you came back from that suspension, you hit Yusuf Nurkic in the face for no reason. And then being out for multiple games because of that, you're going to be away from the team. And then what is the best ability? It is availability. That is something that you have to have if you're going to have a really good team. It doesn't matter how great your team is. If your team's not on the court, as we saw with Brooklyn, with KD, James Harden, and Kyrie, it doesn't matter how great your team looks on paper. It only matters if your team is actually playing. And Draymond Green, with the lieu of just being suspended almost every other game, he's not there. And he confirmed it today when it came to how he is mentally feeling about his suspension.
Also on that day, Coach Kerr came to visit me after shoot-around. And we sat in the yard. He cried. I cried. Because there's a bond there that I've seen it all. Seen the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. And he just said to me, I want you to end this the right way.
And then you have Stephen Curry, who by all means is the only person that's trying to keep this all together. But if you are dealing with a subpar team, a team that does not have the sum of its all parts, you're going to struggle. And he has been struggling. He hasn't been shooting the best this year. He's had streaky games on and off. And especially with the way that they lost against the Raptors, it is not looking good for the Golden State Warriors. Now, through all of this, we always have to think about, well, what is the future of the Golden State Warriors? Because the future of the Golden State Warriors is something I still have a question about. I don't have the answer for it. Because when you think about it, the future was supposed to be James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. James Wiseman is out. Jonathan Kuminga might not stay on the team. He might not stay on the team. Moses Moody, I still have to see more from him. However, though, Steve Kerr has made questionable substitution choices in his career always, but is now getting to a boiling point when you are not a winning team. Because winning cures all. You can have all these problems that they've always had, but as long as you're winning, it doesn't really matter as much. It's like, well, what am I to be upset about if we're winning? But you're not winning. You're, a matter of fact, you're under 500. And so Steve Kerr, and I don't envy the position that he's in, because if I'm going to be honest with you guys, being a coach is one of the hardest positions to be in NBA or just in sports in general. But one of the reasons why it's really difficult, especially in the NBA, is because the minutes. You have to always think about minutes and always think about splits and always have to think about, well, outside of the X's and O's, what's the most difficult part of being a coach? Making sure substitutions work, making sure that the lineups actually work. Even when you have rookies that are lighting it up, you might want to go back to your veterans. And so trying to figure out the minutes in between players is just simply not something that I would wish on my worst enemy. However, you do have the reality that A. Wiggins is not playing the best. He had a good couple of years, but right now he's just sluggish. He's not that great right now. And that's completely okay. But if you're going to have Jonathan Kuminga on your team, you have to put that person in. You got to put that player in, especially with the way that he's rolling and playing. He might not be the immediate future, but he's the only future you guys got outside of the Warriors that we've always known. And how long is the Warriors that we've always known going to stay together? Draymond Green's contract is coming up not this summer, but Klay Thompson is. And is Klay Thompson going to stay on the Golden State Warriors? For me, I think he will. But there's a good possibility that he doesn't. And so that's the problem of it all. You're supposed to bank on the fact that you have a lot of rookies, you have a lot of young players, and you can stand on that. And you can say, okay, cool, Klay, if you leave, Moses Moody is going to step up. But is he? We don't know. And then if you think about it, you look at Draymond Green and say, okay, Draymond, we paid you a lot of money, but, are you going to stay or are you going to go? Are you going to take that pay cut or not? And if Draymond Green says, no, I'm going to go somewhere else, well, then who's going to take Draymond's place? And then if nobody takes Draymond's place, how does the offense change? How does the defense change? How are they going to be able to acclimate to that type of change that they've never really seen before? And then Steph Curry, by all means, is probably going to stay with the team. But with the amount of value that you can get from Steph Curry by letting him go, trading him, you can get a lot of good pieces. And this is one of those instances where, as a GM, you have to think about, is it worth cutting my ties early and getting a lot for these players, or try to squeeze out a championship or two when I can? And being a GM of any team is really difficult. I'm not trying to say that it's a very easy position either. But being a GM of the Warriors is probably one of the most difficult things, especially in recent history, because they're so used to championships. They're so used to making deep playoff push. But right now, that is just not the case. This team is not built for the playoffs. This team is barely even built to make the play-in. Like I said before, this is all symptoms of a dynasty dying. It happens with every dynasty. It happens with the Lakers in the 80s, Boston Celtics in the 90s, happened with the Bulls in the late 90s. It happened with everybody, every single team, even the Spurs, who have sustained their greatness for over long periods of time. Look at where they're at right now. They're not doing so hot. And the Warriors, who have been one of the most dominant teams in the last 8 years, are seeing the fruits of their labor come bare. And honestly, that's nothing to be ashamed about, because you have done so much within those 8 years. You have been in the finals for like 6 of those 8 years. You've gotten 4 championship rings to the Bay. And honestly, those fans, I mean, there's a lot of OG Warriors fans. And I'm not trying to disrespect you guys, but a lot of those fans don't deserve it. You know, a lot of those fans are only there because they're, just trying to watch the good team, right? But you are only, in my opinion, a real fan if you're sticking with them in the good, in the bad, and the ugly. Because as a Chicago Bulls fan and a Chicago Bears fan and a Seattle Seahawks fan, don't forget, it's really difficult watching sports right now. But that's the beauty of it all. The beauty of watching sports, watching a team, supporting a team, is knowing that for most times it's not going to be pretty. Matter of fact, there's going to be a lot of times where it's ugly. But you stick through it all, you hope for the best for the team, and you criticize them when need be. And you make sure that they get right, because when they do get right, a championship is all more beautiful.